We are learning new details about Canada Soccer's drone spying scandal. You'll remember at the Paris Olympic Games over the summer, a staff member from Canada Soccer was caught using a drone to record the New Zealand women's team practice. Well, now our colleagues at Radio Canada's Enquête program have spoken to several former members of the women's and the men's national teams, and they say the incident in Paris was not an isolated one. CBC's Mark Carcasol has more from our colleagues at Enquête.
According to more than 20 people who've had various connections with the nation's national soccer program, who spoke to Enquête for this program, they say that this has been going on a long time. They describe the 2024 incident as just the tip of the iceberg, essentially. They place most of the blame on coach John Herdman, who we know now coaches Toronto FC in the MLS. But they say that this has been going on, essentially various forms of spying, since he took over the women's national program in 2011, carried on when he took over the men's national program in 2018. He was succeeded in coaching the women's national soccer team by Bev Priestman, who is seen essentially as one of his assistants previously, but someone who really looked up to him. She took over the team in 2020 and coached that team all the way to a gold medal at the Olympics in 2021 in Tokyo, which was a high point certainly for Canadian national soccer, which has kind of been unfortunately tarnished in the minds of many people by this ongoing scandal. Sources tell Radio Canada's Enquête program that members of the program faced strong pressure from Canada Soccer's top coaches to take part. We're essentially told that saying no to this was not an option, that if John Herdman's assistants refused to take part in any sort of spying, they were put aside. They told Enquête that you could be blacklisted, which would change your entire career. Sources say Bev Priestman worked with John Herdman, and as I mentioned earlier, he was a mentor to her. And one former member of the Canadians women's team says that drones were an essential part of her preparation as well. So again, just leads to this narrative that this is an ongoing thing, according to what more than 20 people have told Radio Canada. Some sources say that all players weren't necessarily aware of the team spying either, and had some questions about it, but didn't really know whether they should ask them.
Okay, so in terms of the investigation by our colleagues at Enquête, what are we seeing in terms of response?
At this point, not really much. Enquête did reach out to Bev Priestman for comment, but a spokesperson declined to comment on her behalf. Nothing as well from John Herdman at this point, but in a news conference at the end of July, Herdman denied the use of drones during major sporting events. He said, quote, "I'm highly confident that in my time as a head coach and in Olympic Games or World Cup, we've never been involved in any of those activities." Soccer Canada has commissioned an independent report on all this, and they will be releasing the details later this afternoon, though.
That report from CBC's Mark Carcasol. Now we want to stay on this story and turn now to Carrie Serwetnyk. She's a former Team Canada women's national player and the first woman inducted into the Canada Soccer Hall of Fame. Carrie, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Carrie, I want to talk to you about some of the revelations that have come from our colleagues reporting for Enquête. But before I get there, you were in Paris, not as part of the team, but you were in Paris during the Olympic Games, and you were present as those revelations were coming to light that the Canadian team might have been spying on the New Zealand team. They were using drones. Take me back to that moment when this was coming to light. It was making international headlines, and it was quite a scandal for the Canadian team.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say that I'm really proud that we live in a country that's investigating this, right? That it's been a shameful, ridiculous activity that's taken place, and it's wonderful because only changes are going to happen. They're positive. I was in Iceland at a time on my way to Paris, and the news broke before Canadians were waking up, and like my whole day just like flew into, oh my God, this is going to be such a massive story. And it was. Each day more revelations happened. But the thing I was really proud of is going to the game against France in Saint-Etienne, and you could just see the players themselves were organizing the warm-up. They looked so motivated. It was one of the best games I've ever seen Canada play because the players were just so shocked and humiliated and sad and just exposed to sort of extreme conditions. And they played with so much heart, right? And so I think moving forward, this is going to be a shadow for them. The story will never end. And so I think it lit a fire on them. They played a lot better in the Olympics than they did in the World Cup. And moving forward, it maybe be something positive.
Well, Carrie, let's get back to, as you said, the seriousness of these revelations coming to light, because the way you're describing it, many of these players were shocked and it sort of motivated them to do better. But based on the investigation by our colleagues at Radio Canada, several people on both the men's and women's teams knew about this and almost felt a pressure to conform to these types of unethical activities when it came to cultivating their success for the team. And I wonder, how prevalent was that? What do you make of these new revelations coming to light?
Yeah, to be honest, I find that so shocking, because if you put a group of high-level women together, there's such a high ethical standard, and I can't see that a major debate wouldn't happen over this. The only thing that comes to my mind is if they honestly believe that the top 10 teams are doing this, or everyone's doing this kind of surveillance on other teams, prior to matches, maybe it's just become a norm. I mean, that was something John Herdman had said. Yeah, top 10 teams are doing this. I mean, one thing that comes back to me is Canada's men's team did not qualify for 36 years, right? And they had all kinds of hostile environments and corruption and referees, food poisoning, bands playing outside their hotels. And so it was something they could never kind of break through. And maybe, John Herdman saw that we need to fight fire with fire. If other countries are doing, these kind of spy type of activities, maybe they felt they needed to be upping their game and doing the same. That's the thing that makes sense to me. Obviously, it's corrupt. I mean, listening to the Olympic oath and the athletes taking that prior to the Olympics, everything, the verbiage says, don't do that, right? We were cheating. We were absolutely scandalously cheating. And it's shameful. It's embarrassing. But hopefully it's a lesson. Again, our country is investigating this. I asked people from other countries about it, and they just shrugged their shoulders like, who cares, right? And so we should be proud that this is humiliating, and hopefully that we can learn from this and move forward.
Can I ask you something that has been bewildering to so many of us since the Paris Games, which is this necessary? Why do you need to spy on how the team is practicing? Can't you just watch their games? I mean, would this type of activity really lend itself to greater success on the field?
Well, that's the entire joke. I was with some former teammates this weekend. We were talking about it, and we were like, oh my God, this is so stupid. They just could not believe that they would do this, right? First of all, there's so little information that you can really get because, again, there's videos, there's past games that people can see footage of different penalty kicks or corner kicks or free kicks, right? That information's out there. I mean, you might discover, oh, Susie had a bad toe yesterday. Is she playing today, right? You might find out some specifics if a player is going to start. But once the game starts, I mean, 5 minutes into it, you're going to have so much information that it just seemed ridiculous. It's not like NFL football, the ball's on the 10-yard line. This is the 5 choices, Buffalo Bills might do against Arizona in this situation, right? It's not like that, right? Mm-hmm. Soccer's 90 minutes, it's fluid. It's like so many other elements can go into play. And so it seems to me the coaching staff just became obsessed with this, right? Obsessed so much that they would be stupid enough to bring a drone to France there was a no-fly zone. There's fear of terrorist attacks. I wouldn't fly a kite during that time, let alone, over Olympic practice against New Zealand. That was, a team that just wasn't a great team to worry about, right? Maybe a top team, Brazil, United States or something, but it was just dumb. And so the team has played the consequences. Obviously, the coach, I don't know, is she ever going to coach again? That's a big question. And just plain old dumb.
Okay,
it's ridiculous.
I hear you, and I really appreciate the candor, both in terms of your acknowledgement of how kind of silly this whole situation is unnecessarily, and that there is room for positive change, is how you described it at the beginning of our conversation. So just lay out for me, let's say all the allegations turn out to be true and it's rampant manipulation and unethical behavior and downright cheating. What do we need to do? What does Canada Soccer need to do to repair the situation?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's a really tough question. I don't want to say this out loud. Like, I can't imagine Bev Priestman's going to be coaching the national team in the future. It's really tough. Their reputation has been destroyed. Obviously, John Herdman, it's been someone we've loved over the decade. Toronto FC is not going to stop him from playing there, but it definitely is. I guess everyone needs a big slap. They have been punished. There's been a fine to CSA. The team was punished for points, 6 points in the Olympics. Coaches went home. Maybe that's the lesson, and we just move forward. But I don't think, I think about Zinedine Zidane. He's the famous French player when he headbutted the Italian defender in the 2006 Germany World Cup. Anything you know about that player vanished. Any play he's ever done, anything. That's all people will ever remember. And no matter how well the Canadian women's team does in the future, this will be their shadow. And so maybe that's the punishment going forward, right? Coaches losing their jobs and technicians, I don't know, we'll have to figure that one out. But, you also look at other sports, right? Like NFL, baseball, it's all stats nowadays. It's all this deep research into each player and movements. And this is the future. I mean, on a positive note, the women's game has grown so much that we would care to do these things, that they wanted to win so badly that they resorted to these kind of practices. There's always positive notes to take from this, but I'm really glad that we are addressing it. We've been waiting for more after this situation, and we're just going to have to move forward with it.
Carrie Serwetnik, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.